My name is Daniel Graves from BMC Music Services, and I'm here to talk to you about the EV-ETX-18SP, which is a 1800 watt peak 18-inch powered subwoofer from Electro Voice. It's a decent bit of kit. So I bought this 2 months ago. Well, I didn't buy it, my dad did, but we bought it 2 months ago because we needed some low end, because we already had a pair of these, which is the ZLX12Ps from EV, which are decent speakers, like, I'm not going to lie. But we needed a lot of low end to keep up with it, because we were playing a lot of EDM, which is very, very bass heavy, so we needed something that would keep up. So we looked into EV's stuff, and apparently this was the best EDM sub you could get. That was a single 18, so we looked into that. So we bought it, we took it home, we played it for like an hour, sounded great. Then we took it to our first gig, and then that's when things started to go a bit pear-shaped, because we pushed it to about -2 dB input voltage, I think it was something like that, in mono, and it was straight into temp limit. The sub was like starting to distort a bit, which, you know, it's for a single 18 to be pushed that loud. It was really, really loud in there, but that's quite surprising, to be honest. But it sounded decent. Yeah, it sounded decent in that room. It was a musical, so it was designed to have that sort of sound in there. It kept up the ZLXs decently well. It sounded very, very clear while doing it. But yeah, you really have to know your limits with this sub, which is a really reoccurring theme that I'm going to say through this review. So, as always, there's advantages and disadvantages to this product. I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet. But number one advantage to it, it looks really, really good. Like, it looks really professional. It's easy to move, which is a good one because of the caster wheels, and it's not too heavy. It sounds good up until a certain point, as I've already said. If you keep it within its limits, it sounds really good. It can take a fair bit of abuse in terms of volume, which is thanks to the limiting system. It basically has 2 stages of limiting. It has peak limit and temp limit. Now, what temp limit does is you can push it as hard as you want, and the temp limit will keep the driver from basically just killing itself in all sense of terms. It keeps it below where the voice cord gets too hot, which means it's more reliable for a start because you don't cause any damage to it, and it can also stay loud for a longer period of time, which is a really good thing. So yeah, those are the advantages. Yeah, it's a decent sub for what it is, I'm not going to lie. Now, when I talked about the limiting, basically this thing has a tendency to hit limits a lot earlier than you think it'd be. And that is because this is an old driver that EV had. It's a tried and true driver that people wanted to see in a new series of speakers back in 2014. It's called it's a Phoenix driver, I can't remember the name of it, but yeah. It was designed in its day to play rock music, which is basically not as hard as today's EDM music, which is quite obvious really. But yeah, so basically what will happen is when you push it, it can't take it can take the amount of power, but it can't handle it because it's not designed to do that sort of music, and it's not really updated to today's music standards. So EV, I think what they tried to do was to keep money down, obviously keep prices down so they can make more profit. What they decided to do was take an old driver, a cheaper driver, sort of a tried and true driver as it is, get a really, really powerful amp on it, really, really good DSP, which is a great thing about this sub, really good DSP on it, and find every little snippet in the driver's bandwidth basically just to boost it that tiny little bit to just get the most out of it. And what ends up happening is a lot of distortion, quite bad impulse response, and a sort of flaky SPL. Doesn't really stay consistent with its volume output because it can't handle it. But yeah, that's one of the disadvantages. I can't really think of any more actually. That's the main one I wanted to get over. It's quite heavy as well. If I were to choose between this and the QSC 181, I would go over the 181 simply because it's lighter than this and it's easy to move around. But I think this does perform a bit better. So yeah, disadvantages are quite severe one on this one, but if you spend, say, this sub is on, I think it's US dollars, it's $1,500, I think, something like that. When you can get the Danish Sound Labs TH-118, which I tend to talk about a lot, which is basically two of these, but sounds amazing, impeccable. It's a really, really unique horn design on it. It's about the same size. And it also has an SPL of 137, and this has a continuous SPL of around 125, not the 135 that they're stated. So keep that in mind when you buy these things. They tend to over-exaggerate the SPL a bit. But yeah, those are the advantages and disadvantages.